There's a Gemara Masechta Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara that's quoted a number of times. The Rebbe spoke about it a number of times. And the Gemara says that there were 10 masois, there were 10 journeys that the Shechina journeyed during the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. You know, the Shechina left the Beis HaMikdash, it journeyed from place to place. Whatever it is, it slowly departed from the Beis HaMikdash. It didn't just, one jump go away. It left in stages, so to say. And then the Gemara says that parallel to that, the Sanhedrin also had 10 stops, 10 Goliaths. Why did the Sanhedrin actually went into Golus, whatever you call the self-imposed exile, 40 years before the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash? There was already, things were spiritually deteriorating in the land of Israel. There were a lot of murder, things going on, that the Sanhedrin was unable to start, killing all the murderers, and thus so the Sanhedrin prosecute whatever. So the Sanhedrin left the Lishkas Hagazis. The halacha is that only when the Sanhedrin is in their designated place in the Beis HaMikdash, only then do they have the koyach, do they have the halachic authority to rule to give capital punishment. So they left the Lishkas Hagazis. They left the room. They didn't go too far. They had special rooms in the Har HaBayis, in the Temple Mount, that they were there, but since they weren't in the Lishkas Hagazis, they didn't have, so to say, the ability to perform capital punishment, so they so to say, they couldn't take the responsibility of carrying out the capital punishments. They had to, so to say, leave. And then they went from place to place. It says from that they went to Yerushalayim itself, Yerushalayim to Yavna. You all know that Sanhedrin was in Yavna for a while. From Yavna they went to Usha, from Usha back to Yavna, from again to Usha, back then to Shvarim, to Beishadim, to Tzipori. The last stop was Teveriah. Rashi explains that the Sanhedrin followed the Nasi. Whenever the Nasi, the Sanhedrin lived, or was, let's say Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi was the leader of the Sanhedrin. He himself changed locations during his lifetime for various reasons, so the Sanhedrin moved along with him. So the last stop was Teveriah. The Rebbe used to pronounce it Teveriah. And it says, Teveriah Amuka Mikul, and Teveriah is the deepest, in other words, it's like a valley, it's the lowest, out of all these places, it's the lowest ground. And it brings a pasuk, find that it's, and then the punchline is Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Misham Asidin Ligoyim, that from Tevariah they will go back, the Sanhedrin will return. Shnemar Hisnari may offer Kumi Shvi. It says, get up from the dust. Hisnari may offer. We all know this phrase from the Chadaydi, based on the pasuk. Get up and wake up from the dust. Stand up, Shvi, return. So the simple meaning of the Gemara is that they will return. In other words, Tevariah, since it's the earth, it's a valley, it's the lowest place, so from there they will return. Now there's very, very big discussions. A lot of, once you get into Midrashim, you get lost. But this is connected. What does it mean from there they will be redeemed? Who's going to be redeemed? So the Rambam quotes this Gemara, seemingly, in Hilchos Sanhedrin. The Rambam writes, we have a tradition, the Rambam writes that the last place the Sanhedrin was in Teveriah. The Rambam says, and we have a tradition, that that's where they're going to return. The Sanhedrin will return first to Tevariah, and from there, from there they'll return, they'll go to the Beis HaMikdash. So in other words, the path of redemption will follow the path of destruction, so to say. In other words, it's not going to right away return to the Beis HaMikdash, but it's going to return from the place where the last stop that it made, that's where the Sanhedrin will come back. What is the reason why the Sanhedrin will come back there? Why will the Sanhedrin Dafka return to Tevariah? So there's a number of discussions. I just want to discuss a few points over here. There's one vort that's Alpinigla, and the Rebbe mentioned this. It's Rogatchover was the one that explained this, and the Rebbe mentioned it in a Sikha once. the word al pinigla is like this. There's a concept, there's a whole discussion, which is really a topic in of itself. It's a very interesting topic. I'm sure you can read about it in a number of places today. That of this whole debate, if we could bring back the smicha, the Sanhedrin, the power the Sanhedrin had was because they had an unbroken chain of smicha, of ordination, going back until Moshe Rabbeinu. Once that chain of smicha broke, so today there's, for example, the calendar that we have today is a set calendar. It's we don't have the power today, even if somebody would know all the halachas and he would know all the secrets that the Sanhedrin knew of astronomy, how to know when you make the new month, how the moon is supposed to appear, and thus we won't be able to do it. Why? Because in order to do it, you have to have smicha, you have to have a koyach that goes back to Moshe Rabbeinu, and today we don't have it. So, similarly, if you look in Shulchan Aruch, even in different laws of not only capital punishment, but knossim, dinei knossos, different things that you have in halacha that Beis Din had the power to fine a person, not just as telling him that he's obligated to pay back a debt that he owed, but have different things, kafel or other things that were fine. Only smuch and certain limitations, you have to have smicha, depends on other limitations as well, but a lot of it depends on the smicha. Today, the Rabbanim today, the Alter Rebbe quotes this phrase in Tanya, the Chusay, the Rabbanim kav dinan. In other words, today we don't have smicha. Whatever we do, whatever authority that the Beis Din has today is just as a shliach, so to say, of the Beis Din that was in those times that had Sanhedrin, that had smicha, and they had the power to carry out all things. So they said that in future generations, even though you don't have the power to carry out all the laws of punishment and fines and different powers that they had, but at least certain basic things that Rabbanim have the koyach to do, because, so to say, we're not doing it with our own power, because we don't have the smicha, we're doing it merely as shluchim, so to say, as messengers of the Beis Din of previous generations. So, the question here is there how is the smicha going to be brought back? We know one of the promises of the future redemption, we say in Shemona Esrei 3 times a day, is that the Eibush Shiva Shefteinu Kvar Yishena, Hashem will return our judges as in former times. Based on the pasuk, the Eibush says, I'll return the Sanhedrin. So how is the smicha going to come back? So this not only is a matter of much discussion, but this was a lot of controversy, major controversies, a famous episode in history when there was Mari Beirav, the Malbach, in the city of Tzfas. There was someone, who was it, the one that initiated the smicha, the Mari Beirav? But Malbach was one that was against it. Yeah. Mari Beirav said that that it's all based on the Rambam. The Rambam writes in 2 places. One place he writes in his Hilchos Sanhedrin, another place he writes is in Pirush and Mishnayos in Sanhedrin. The Rambam writes, it seems to me the Rambam writes, that if all the sages of Israel gather together and they will decide to be seimich, to ordinate someone, It's a good question. That's a good question. That's part of the controversy. Come on. So if they'll all decide to ordain someone, so then he will have the power of smicha. No, this is whatever. So the Rambam says, what's his proof? The Rambam says that the pasuk says that the Sanhedrin will return before Moshiach comes. The pasuk says, "V'shifa, I will return your judges as in former times." Afterwards, you will be called the city of justice. So the Rambam, Pirush and Mishnayos, understands that Moshiach returns after the Sanhedrin. And I think the Rambam also says, I don't remember exactly, but the point is, even if they return together with Moshiach, how is Moshiach going to bring back smicha? How is Moshiach going to have smicha? So Moshiach, the Rambam says, Moshiach can't do anything against the laws of the Torah. Can't say, okay, Sanhedrin, you go and judge when they don't have smicha. So the Rambam says, you must say that the Sanhedrin will have koyach of smicha because all the Chacham will get together and they'll agree to ordain these people.
Mashiach comes is no shayla.
Why Mashiach comes? How's smicha going to return when Mashiach comes? Oh, very good. So the Rambam writes. Now the Rambam. So the Rambam writes in the Hilchos Sanhedrin, the Rambam reiterates this thing a bit differently. In Hilchos Sanhedrin, he's more doesn't say outright. He says Adavar Tzarech Chechra. It still needs to be decided, basically. So this was a major donas. Was Labedik and Freilach. There was two camps, though pro Smicha against Smicha. They actually made a Sanhedrin, and I think Moshe the Rabbi Yosef Kairo, the Mechaber of the Shulchan Aruch, got Smicha from this Beistin, but it was a whole thing. The question was what the Rambam meant, if the halach is like the Rambam, and what if the Rambam changed his mind from Pirush and Mishnah. It was a very, very big discussion. Yeah, exactly. So this was now you had a very good question about Chias HaMesim. The Radvaz right away says Eliyahu Novi will come. He'll give smicha. He writes Moshiach will give smicha. Although the Rebbe asked the question, who gave Moshiach smicha? I mean, Moshe. So the Rebbe says, the Rebbe writes, could say even better. Why do you have to go so far? The Rebbe said the Sanhedrin themselves will stand up at Chias HaMesim. Yeah, but the Rebbe says Chias HaMesim happens in a later stage. Chias HaMesim happens in a later stage. It says there will be those that will stand up first. So the way I humbly understand this thing is a cloud that the Rebbe explained in Rambam in many places. The Rambam holds that the Torah has to work by natural means. There has to be a natural way how you could do it. For example, we all know how did they engrave the letters on the Choshen and the Ephraim stones? They use the Shamir worm. The Rambam doesn't mention a word about the Shamir worm. He says you engrave it, So the Rebbe explained, not that the Rambam is denying or that is supernatural or the Shamir is a supernatural worm, but it's not a regular occurrence.
Carrying aces that way is supernatural.
This is a teva, David. It seems like it's, but either way, the Rebbe says the Rambam holds that the Torah tells you something. Maybe she could have prepared a supernatural way, or to do it, but there has to be a way for us to do it, even if you don't rely on supernatural means. So if you have to rely on Chias HaMesim for smicha, that means that the Torah, in order for the Sanhedrin, which is part of in order to have a Shleimus HaTorah, you have to have the Sanhedrin. In order to have the Sanhedrin, you need to have Chias HaMesim. So then you need for that aspect of the Torah to rely on a miracle. So to say, Torah mitzvahs that Rambam holds has to be able to work itself out in a natural way, not just in a supernatural way. That's one way of understanding. I'm not saying some people mention this. Who explained this?
This is a real kasha.
No, the Rebbe meant, I saw tonight in the Sikha, the Rebbe says, what the Sanhedrin will stand up at Chias HaMesim. The Rebbe says, that will happen later.
The Rebbe says, the Rebbe answers Mishnah and Noim.
So you bring the question now back on the Rambam. In this Sikha, the Rebbe said, you might ask the Sanhedrin will stand up at Chias HaMesim. The Rebbe says that will happen later. But fine, but what about Moshe Naden? Still doesn't answer Moshe Naden. Moshe Naden, the Rebbe says many places will stand up right away. So this is the way I understand. So the answer to that question is based on what I said. In other words, Eno Chanami it says so, but to say that the psak in Torah is could only in other words a mitzvah in Torah could only be fulfilled if you rely on Chias HaMesim. Again, it's a possibility in the Rambam.
I have a shayla on this question.
Yeah.
The Odin.
Yeah.
It has to be in the Pashut in Gashmis. It can't be. The Odin cannot be made if it's not in the middle. If it's in the middle, if it takes place, you need that. It physically the way it's made. It's not shayes.
No, you make it in a certain measurement, and then the Eibush makes a nace. It doesn't take a measurement. Besides that, Rama B'chal doesn't make the Asiyah side. You're going into a whole separate discussion with the Odin, Stam Lahor. But anyway, I don't want to get involved in this. But in other words, one possibility. But anyway, but in other words, there's the concept of Nevuah, right? Certain halachas, let's say for Moshiach to build the Beit HaMikdash, you need to have prophecy. Prophecy, according to the Rambam, is part and parcel of the Torah. Prophecy is not considered the supernatural miracles. Part of Nevuah was something that was always there, but something which is not Moshiach will prophesize who's a Kohen, who's a Levi, who's a Yisrael. So the whole avoid in the Beit HaMikdash will be based on prophecy. But the Torah already set up in such a way. But you're talking here, they need to have tchias hamesim. In other words, you need to rely. That's one thing. Another thing are those that claim that those that stand up at tchias hamesim, I need to get a new smicha. Because they're now a new person. But that's a separate discussion. I don't want to get in. You mentioned the question, I'm telling you the possible answers. Another thing is that Rambam anyway in Pirush Mishnah is discussing Sanhedrin returning before Mashiach. They'll return maybe before Moshiach comes. At any rate, it could be, it's a possibility. The Rambam says they'll return before Mashiach. So it could be, maybe the Lafiza, even if you're going to say Moshiach will be there, maybe they'll return before Moshiach. It's all possibilities. Anyway, this it happens to be that this in new modern times, so this idea of Sanhedrin took some root among certain circles. I don't want to elaborate. The Rebbe was very strong against it. The Rebbe felt it's a very big churban to start making a Sanhedrin today for various reasons. The Rebbe used the expression in a certain sikha that says "Vashiva sheftayich," I will return your judges. That has to come. That is a shechina. That has to be with the return of the shechina. It can't just happen.
That was when the Babish ran a campaign with Matam.
Anyway, that was ein vorsichtig da. Fine. Now, that's one akuta. Now, why did I mention all of this? Because what does it have to do with this Gemara like this? The Rogatchover gives an interesting answer and explanation of ties us in with the fact that Sanhedrin will return to the very. The Rogatchover says an interesting thing. The Rogatchover says there's a toyar of Sanhedrin. I don't know if I'm able to explain this well. There's a concept, there's an existence of a Sanhedrin. You have a concept in Halacha, for example, that tzibur loy meis. Individuals could die. A tzibur community doesn't die. In other words, when certain halachas that are dependent upon an individual, so let's say he has to bring a carbon, for example. So after he passes away, he can't bring a carbon. But if let's say a community has to bring a carbon, so if let's say it's the next generation, but again, I don't remember the details here, but in a certain sense, if it's a communal thing, the change of generations doesn't change, it changes the individual people, doesn't change the shame, the concept, the name, the so to say, the theoretical, subject of a tzibur of a congregation. The same thing he brings from certain sources is the concept of the Sanhedrin. The concept, the power of the Sanhedrin remains forever. And even today, that's also ties into what I mentioned before, even today, the concept of the Sanhedrin remains in the context that today, certain things that we do are still being done as, for example, the Rebbe says, we all follow the calendar that was set up by Rabbi Yehuda Hanosi's grandchild, Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya. We're following the calendar. It's not just, we're like following his Basin. Like in today's times, we are living according how his Basin dictated how the calendar should work. So the Sanhedrin is still alive, so to say, in the individual. There's no individual that's a Sanhedrin, but the Toyar, the name of the Sanhedrin still exists. So he says an interesting thing. He says, in order for the Sanhedrin to regain its Toyar, its title of Sanhedrin, so it has to return to the place where the Sanhedrin ceased to exist. Because it has to, I don't know exactly how to explain this, but I guess the point is, where the Sanhedrin stopped, if the Sanhedrin will all of a sudden return in the Beis HaMikdash, so it's like starting afresh, it's a new beginning. Where do you come from? What gives you the title Sanhedrin? But when they come to Teveriah, which this is a place where the Sanhedrin was the last time, so there is where they're able to obtain now the name, the title Sanhedrin. And through that, it seems, it helps with, once they're able to take this abstract term Sanhedrin and be able to apply it to concrete people, it seems that Rogatchover also learns that helps with the smicha issue as well. Because it's, in other words, you're returning to the original Sanhedrin that was then. He doesn't directly explain how they're going to get smicha, but it seems that he's teaching guys that this is the way, in order for the Sanhedrin to be able to get its title of a Sanhedrin, it needs to, so to say, you need to return back to where it was. Then it becomes, in other words, the title Sanhedrin remains even now. But in order for it to take on hands and arms, as the Rebbe said, this should be a physical person that's there.
I would say it's Badeichak. You're talking different people, maybe different people, and if it's the same people, not Chesem and new people, and the only thing they have the place where the Sanhedrin.
It's a very deep word. There's a very deep word. In other words, In other words, the Toyar Sanhedrin. There's a theory, there's a tzura, there's a chomer and there's a tzura. There's a chomer and a tzura. There's the matter and there's the form. There's the body and the soul. The body are the people. The soul is the title, is the muhus. In order for one to connect to the other, it has to be in the place where the Sanhedrin was, because that's Ad Hayom Hazeh, the place of the Sanhedrin remains in Teveriah, so to say. That's the last place where they were. Whatever. You could agree, disagree. That's the brothers of the Rogachover. The Rebbe mentioned this in the Sikha once. Whatever. Stop. Yeshla, again, it's not fully explained, but it's just the interesting point that he brings out. Now, there's another point I wanted to say. I don't have much time. It's a very geschmack of word. In general, there's people who might be more familiar, less familiar. The Zohar says that Moshiach will come in the land of Golul. Golul, the Galilee. Yeah, Golul, the Galilee, you know. Galil, yeah, we're in Golul, we're in the Galil, is he going to come? So some people say Tzfas, some people say Teveriah, they quote this Gemara here. A different, I could give you a few other addresses, which we don't know exactly, Migdaleder, Pikasar, I don't know, whatever it might be. Ich weiß nicht. You know, the Rebbe, I think, once told, the Rebbe, I think, once told, forget who, I think it was Mrs. Gorelick, said the Moshiach will first come either in Milan or in Melbourne. In Yechidus, that's what years ago, anyway, before Chav Chasiv and Tav Shin and Aleph, I think Rabbi Feldman from Sydney passed by the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, I said this? Like, and the Rebbe, something like, I think like the Rebbe didn't accept it, and he kept his, and that night the Rebbe spoke to Sikha that Moshiach will come first to the Moshiach will come first to Brooklyn, to where the nothing with where the Rebbe is. Yeah, so so you have various different places in Eretz Yisrael. Now, the Zohar says, why is Moshiach going to first come to Golul? What the Zohar says is because that was the place where it was destroyed first. So again, before Hashem say, it's hard to know what was destroyed first, but that's the reason the Zohar gives. Now, some people connect the two. They connect, when it says from there they'll be redeemed, they explain it doesn't just mean on Teveriah. It doesn't just mean the Sanhedrin will return there first. It means the Moshiach will come there, Leonov will come there. That actually was the Yechidus that the chief rabbis of Israel had the Rebbe Tav Shemem Tes. The Rebbe discussed Teveriah a little bit. And the Rebbe said that it's not a problem to say the Leonov will first come in Brooklyn, and tomorrow, the next day, he'll go to Teveriah. You know, nobody will have time. That's the way it's going to be. But you have a lot of people connected this Gemara with the Zohar that Mashiach will first appear in Teveriah. What is the reason? The very, very interesting, you call it a drush, a remez. It's written in the Sefer of Mekubal. The Ben Ish Chai brings it down. It's very interesting drash, but it's a geschmack word. We all know Kupas Rav Meir Baal Hanes. Yeah. You have in Teveriah, if anyone was there, you have everyone goes to the cave of Rabbi Meir, the gravesite of Rabbi Meir. As they told me, it was the first time it was in Teveriah. So he was there by the cave of Meir Balanes. So he sees the Alter Yid, he asks him, is this the cave of Meir Balanes? He doesn't answer him. A while later, the guy turns to him and says, where are you now? So he says, I'm in Teveriah. Says, how do you know you're in Teveriah? He says, Mezuk, sister. They tell me I'm in Teveriah. He says, Mezuk, that's also the cave of Ramir Baal Hanes. They say that this is the cave of Ramir Baal Hanes. They say, Mezuk, that's what they say. So anyway, so you have Ramir Baal Hanes is buried in Teveriah. Some people, he's the one, when you give tzedakah, even Krel Chabad, is Ramir Baal Hanes. So what's the connection here? So he says, it's interesting, but he says like this. There's a medrash that says that when Mashiach will come, the nations of the world are going to, whoever is the Satan, whatever, they're going to tell the Eibusher, what are you redeeming the Jewish people for? What's the difference between the Yidden and the Goyim? The Yidden worshipped the Goyim worshipped Avodah Zarah, the Yidden also Lahavdil did. They did this, the Yidden did this. So the Eibusher turns to Michael and says, you're the Malach of the Yidden, what do you have to answer? So Michael is silent. The Eibusher says, you're silent. So he says, the Eibusher says, you know why? Because the Yidden give tzedakah. The schus that the tzedakah didn't give one to another, they'll be redeemed. The Pasuk says, Ani medaber b'tzedakah rab lo yishia. pasuk, the Eibusher speaks in Staka, that's what's going to help the Yidden. There's a number of questions in the Smedish. To make a long story short, the thing goes like this. There's a famous Medish that there was a Roman to Nisrufa Sarasha, asked Rabbi Akiva, he says, how are you allowed to do tzedakah? If the Eibishter decreed someone should be poor, the Eibishter, why are you giving tzedakah? And he gives a mashal. He says, if you have a king that locked up a slave in a cell, and he says, don't feed him, don't give him teeth, and someone will come and give him teeth and feed him, what's going to happen? That person is considered he's going against the king. So the Eibishter said, this person should be poor, you're going against the king. Rabbi Akiva said, what happened if you have a king that locked up his son in the cell? And he says, don't feed him, don't give him teeth. And someone comes and feeds him and gives him teeth. The king not only won't be angry with him, he'll appreciate what he did. So he said like this, he says, Goyim are like slaves of the Eibishter. When they do tzedakah, not only they're not doing anything righteous, you could claim they're going against the Eibishter's plan. The Eibishter said, this person should be poor. How do you have a right to give him tzedakah? But Yidden are sons of the Eibishter. So when Yidden do tzedakah, so then the Eibishter appreciates it. But here you run into another thing. There's a machloikis. If the Yidden, when they don't do the Eibishter's will, if they're considered slaves of the Eibishter's sons. So Rabbi Yudah says, when the Jewish people serve the Eibishter, they're called the sons. When they don't serve the Eibishter, they're called the slaves. Rabbi Meir says, Benkach or Benkach Kruyuban, always called sons. So it says, usually the halacha follows Rabbi Yudah and his arguments Rabbi Meir. So it comes out that now in Galus, we're not doing the Eibishter once, so we're also termed slaves of the Eibishter. If we're slaves of the Eibishter, when we do tzedakah, maybe it's not considered this chus, because a slave that you feed when the king doesn't want him to be fed, the king won't appreciate it. But if you go like Rabbi Meir, so even when the Yidden are in Galus and not doing the Eibishter one, so the tzedakah that they do is appreciated by the Eibishter, because every Jew is still considered the son to the Eibishter. So he says that's why Moshiach will come to Teveriah, because in Teveriah is the Rabbi Meir, that's his place, and in his place, that's the halacha follows him. So Mamela, the Eibishter also, I don't want to get into all pilpul, the Eibishter paskins like Rabbi Meir in this case. He says that Ani Medaber b'tzedakah, I paskin like Rabbi Meir, that the tzedakah that Yidden gave one to another in the time of Golus, even when they weren't maybe great tzaddikim, is considered as chus, and that's chus Mashiach comes. So he says that's why you give always tzedakah Rabbi Meir Baal HaNeis. It's in his merit that the tzedakah is mekubal. And he says that's why Mashiach will come to Teveriah, because Mashiach comes in the schus of tzedakah. And whose schus is it tzedakah mekubal? Rabbi Meir Baal HaNeis. So it's a very interesting thing. I just finished up with one word that Amor Cheliah mentioned, Rebbe, that Yechidus, they say also, Mezuk, the quote, that there's a tradition, Amir Baal HaNeis asked to be buried standing up, with a stick in it, what I think was maybe stick in his hand, standing up, not flat. Rebbe mentioned that in times of the Gemara, it wasn't considered necessarily such a abnormal thing. He said, why? Because when Mashiach comes, he doesn't want to even wait the time that it takes to stand up. He should just walk. So just a lesson on how much we should anticipate Mashiach. We should be ready at the second's notice. Line, take it from me, Admam. That's what they say. That's the tradition.